Some changes at universities across Texas will go into effect when classes start next week, specifically revisions to classes regarding discussions of race and gender. We told you last month about the new state law encouraging schools to focus on job readiness rather than academic freedom. New reports show Texas A&M has canceled several courses, with others changing and scrubbing controversial discussions of race and gender. Texas Tech's Chancellor Brandon Creighton wrote the new law before the system selected him as its leader late last year. He says if someone wants to teach or learn gender studies, they should not attend Texas Tech.
They can pursue any other learning avenue or path online or within some other medium that they choose to, but no.
Creighton is one of many chancellors at major Texas university systems who are former Republican lawmakers. The others include Texas A&M and Texas State.